So let's talk about Emilio Aguinaldo. Was he the hero who freed a nation? Or was he a leader forced to make impossible choices that, well, cost lives? Today, we're diving into the incredibly complex story of a man who was both a celebrated president and a deeply controversial figure, right at the heart of the Philippines' fight for freedom. You know, this quote really nails it. Being a hero in a revolution is one thing, but leading it? That means making these life or death decisions that don't just win battles. They have to build a nation, or they can break it. And Aguinaldo's story, as you're about to see, is a masterclass in just how heavy that burden of leadership can be. Okay, so first up, how does a young guy from a pretty well-off family end up leading a massive revolution? Let's go back to the beginning and check out his absolutely lightning-fast rise to power. What's so fascinating here is that the revolution had two very different kinds of leaders at the top. On one side, you've got Emilio Aguinaldo. He came from a family with some money, got a formal education. But on the other side, you have Andres Bonifacio, a brilliant, self-taught leader who came from much humbler beginnings. Bonifacio actually founded the Katipunan, the secret society that sparked the whole revolution. Aguinaldo's path was different. He made his name winning battles, and that military success is what really set the stage for everything that came next. And just look at how fast this all happened. We're talking about 5 years. That's it. In 1896, he's a battlefield commander. By 97, he's a controversial president. In 98, he's declaring independence. And by 1901, he's captured by a totally new enemy. It was an absolute whirlwind. And in that chaos, a nation was trying to be born. Right, but becoming president wasn't some simple victory lap for Aguinaldo. The very moment that was supposed to unite all the revolutionaries, well, it ended up tearing them apart. And this leads to one of the most painful chapters in the entire revolution. See, as the revolutionaries started actually winning against Spain, a totally new and dangerous conflict started to brew. The fight wasn't just against the enemy outside anymore. It became about who was going to control the future of the Philippines from the inside. Different factions began fighting each other for power. And this all just exploded at the Tejeros Convention. I mean, the idea was perfect on paper, right? Get all the revolutionary leaders in one room, create one unified government. But this meeting, which was designed to create unity, ended in betrayal. It completely changed the course of the revolution forever. The fallout was just swift and brutal. Aguinaldo gets elected president, but Bonifacio, the guy who started it all, the father of the Katipunan, he rejects the results, and for that defiance, he was arrested and, tragically, executed by his own comrades. So the revolution had a new president, yes, but it was now broken and violently divided. But even with all that terrible infighting, the struggle went on. After a short time in exile, Aguinaldo came back, and this next part, this is the absolute high point of his entire career, finally declaring independence. June 12, 1898. This date is everything. From the balcony of his home, Aguinaldo declared the Philippines a free and independent nation. Can you even imagine that moment? For the first time in over 300 years, the country was its own. It was just this moment of pure, unfiltered joy and triumph. And this was so much more than just words. Under Aguinaldo's leadership, this new nation got its most powerful symbols. It had its own flag, a national anthem, a whole new government. The dream wasn't just a dream anymore. It was real. You could see it. You could hear it. But that dream, it was incredibly fragile. Just as one colonial power was finally pushed out, a brand new one appeared on the horizon. The fight for freedom, it was about to start all over again. At first, the Filipinos actually saw the United States as an ally, someone who was helping them defeat Spain. But that hope just shattered when the U.S. turned around and bought the Philippines from Spain for $20 million. And just like that, the liberators had become the new colonizers. Talk about a betrayal. So Aguinaldo leads this fierce guerrilla war against the Americans for 2 years. But their military power was just overwhelming. In 1901, he was captured. And that was pretty much the end of his role as the military leader of the resistance. And that brings us to the really tricky part of his story, his legacy. Because what he did after he was captured is what makes people argue about him to this day. Was his final big move an act of a realist, or was it an act of a traitor? So after his capture, Aguinaldo took an oath of allegiance to the United States, and he told his soldiers to surrender. This quote captures the debate perfectly. Was he being a realist, trying to save his people from a war they just couldn't win? Or did he betray the very revolution he had led? This really breaks it all down. On one hand, his supporters point to these huge achievements. He united the revolution, he declared independence, he fought not one but two colonial powers. But his critics will always point to the dark spots: Bonfacille's death happening under his watch, and his surrender to the Americans. You just can't tell the story of Aguinaldo without looking at both sides of this coin. And maybe this is the best way to think about him. Emilio Aguinaldo was not a perfect hero. Far from it. His story is full of contradictions. But he was absolutely pivotal. Without him, the story of the Philippines just wouldn't be the same. He changed everything. This might be the perfect summary. If José Rizal was the mind of the revolution and Andrés Bonifacio was its heart, then Emilio Aguinaldo, he was its hands. He was the one who had to take all the big ideas and all the passion and actually try to turn it into a government and a war and a nation. And he had to bear all the terrible costs that came with it. So, we'll leave you with this question to think about. After hearing his story, the amazing triumphs, the awful tragedies, and the impossible choices he had to make, what do you think is the true cost of leadership? And was the price he paid for it worth it in the end?